Welcome to the Out of Darkness podcast, Evil Part 2, an In Darkness, Into Light media production. Hey, as I said, welcome to the Out of Darkness show. I'm your host, Brent, and this is the show where we talk and discuss all things supernatural, paranormal, occultic, and strange phenomena. But we have these conversations by analyzing them from the lens of Scripture and using a biblical worldview. Once again, I am joined by the lovely Lydia. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Not too bad. This is part 2 of Evil. A lot of people have actually been asking about this since we put out the first one. So I think we're just going to do a bit of a recap real quick, just what we've already talked about. And then you want to just do it how we did last time, where you start with the church stuff and I kind of fill in where I need to fill in and then explain something a little bit later?
We can do that. That's fine.
All right. So just to remind folks, so this is a kind of like a theological review of evil. There is a lot of things that happen in this show, and it's not an attack on the producers or the directors or anybody like that. It's really it was actually a really well done show. We've talked about that several times.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is each episode that we put out is going to be going over an overview of each season. And so the first season to me was kind of like an introduction. We're introducing characters, we're introducing different events that took place. So do you remember any of that first season, Lydia?
The first season basically started off, started introducing the characters, obviously, because it is the first season, but what it did was it formed a group of what is called assessors. One was raised in a Muslim family, but is atheist, it is a scientist, and is very good at figuring out things and fixing things. But he comes from a Islamic perspective, but he's an atheist. Another comes from a Catholic background, but is now an agnostic, and then one is a priest in training. By the end of the second season, he is a full-blown priest, so he's in seminary.
Now, I thought it was the first season that he was introduced into a priest. It was the second season then?
Like right at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he, and so these three go assess. These three go assess.
Sorry, guys. I was telling Lydia to try to move her microphone just a little bit closer so y'all can hear a little bit better.
These three go assess different cases that are presented to the Catholic Church for exorcism, and most of the time they're able to quote unquote debunk them with reasoning. Like one time, this person heard noises in her house and thought it was a demon of some sort because her husband was a sociopath and started killing people, and it turns out he was just a sociopath. It wasn't a demon. But what this noise was a pipe connected to the dishwasher that got clogged, that caused noise reverberating in the house. So
pretty common thing, I would say, when we're talking about these different paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
But
they also introduced what the entire series is going to be about, which is these sigils. And these sigils, they said, comes from the Pavalia Codex. The Pavalia Codex is what the show terms the Devil's Bible.
Yeah,
and,
so
Brent will explain more on that.
So the Devil's Bible was done, I want to say it was like the 14th century, if
14th or 15th century, something like that.
14th or 15th century.
Yeah.
It was done now. I'm going to tell you what I think happened with this thing. And then I'm going to give the legend behind it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
So the Devil's Bible was actually it's better known to the Catholic Church as the Codex. I hope I'm saying this right, but Gigas. So Codex Gigas. And basically, Gigas in Latin means large book.
That's funny.
This book, guys, is basically one of the biggest books. Like, the size of it is ridiculous. It's over 800 pages. Each page was actually done by hand, as far as the lettering, the printing, the different things are inside of it. It was all done. But the one thing that's kind of controversial about it is that the monk, which I think he was it Herman? Was that his name?
I am not
Herman
sure.
the Hermit or something like that? I don't remember what it was. I'm sorry, guys. And really, for the context of how the show uses it, really, that's not super, super important to know what the monk's name was. But basically, scholars have looked at this what they call the Devil's Bible for several hundred years, actually, and it's got a bunch of scrutiny on both sides, because when they try to sorry about that. When they try to analyze it, okay.
Herman the Recluse.
Herman the Recluse?
Yes.
Okay, so Herman the Recluse was the penner, supposedly.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the whole, penning aspect, it's a bit strange and a bit convoluted, because they're saying that the whole entire document, the whole entire codex, was done by one person. And on one hand, I feel like people would be like, well, what's the big deal?
I was just reading up on it a little more, but it basically, the Herman the Recluse was sentenced.
Yeah, I was getting to that. I was
yeah.
just making sure that we were on the same page there.
Yeah.
So for basically how the story goes is that Herman the Recluse basically had went against his vows in some capacity. Now, I have no idea what that means, especially in the time frame. That could be anything from, him misquoting scripture at some point, or if the diocese that he was in, took a vow of silence and he spoke. We don't know. That the reason to his punishment is, well, just not there, really. But what they decided to do, supposedly, is they were actually going to wall him up alive, and he basically pleaded with the other monks that if he could write all the human knowledge and basically put it in a book in 24 hours, that if he could do that, they would set him free.
Yeah.
And so he supposedly did it, but he was getting into the late hours. So he was essentially running, I think there was only maybe an hour left, supposedly. And he got so frustrated with himself and got frustrated with the situation, he actually summoned the devil himself.
And sold his soul.
And sold his soul, according to what they say. Now, I don't believe that any soul can be sold, because the soul is not ours to begin with. And Scripture kind of defines that way. But yeah, so that happens. They supposedly set him free after that, because this codex, like I said, it takes two people to move this book. It weighs like 150, 200 pounds. Because each page was actually done, I believe, from goat skin. I think, if I remember correctly, or was sheepskin or something, or donkey or something like that.
I'm not sure, but what it was used. Unfortunately, I don't know.
Right. So yeah, and so what they ended up doing in the show is they basically said, "Oh, well, the church, has this document." And here's the problem, guys. So anybody actually has access to that codex now. It's public. It's a public information. You can literally Google it, and the whole thing will come up in PDF form. So it's not hard to find this, but to say that book was what they defined it as in the show, it's a very, very far stretch.
It is, but it makes for a good show.
It makes for a good show. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we're trying to look for accuracy here. Because if you're going to make a certain claim about the church as a whole, right? Because this goes across the board for me. If you're going to make claims about a church, or you're going to make claims about the diocese, or whatever you want to say related to Christianity, you have to really back up your claims. And that's what I'm suggesting here, is that they really have to back this up. Now, I know why they changed the name. Really, the name change was because of, they were trying to basically make it sound more legit than what it was, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of where it's at. Now, did they... Here's my question for you, Lydia. Did they show any extra sigils that you remember in the second season?
They showed a few, and the way they explained it is that the sigils represent houses, and in order for the house to continue on, the next leader has to cannibalize the previous leader of the house. And if that doesn't happen, then the house dies.
And that's not metaphorically, actually.
Yeah, and that's what Leland Townsend, the main character, is trying to do, is to continue on. And his sigil represents, like, the leader of all the houses.
So that would be Baal, I believe.
Yeah, and so in those sigils, they come from, as Brandon's mentioned before, the Lesser Key of Solomon, and
the Lesser and Greater Key. Yeah. So, do you want me to explain that real quick, just to let everybody that's listening kind of remember what we're talking about?
Yeah, you
here?
can recap.
So the Greater Key of Solomon. So they're basically separated into three different groups. The third one, right now, guys, I can't remember what the third one is, but it's all related to the Greater and Lesser Key of Solomon. So when you hear Greater Key of Solomon, what they're really talking about is the higher powered demons. And these higher powered demons basically are like kings and earls and, all these different things. So now I don't remember exactly what the sigil looks like because I don't have that information directly in front of me. But honestly, for context, guys, it wouldn't really make a difference if I, try to explain the sigil. The point is that so if Leland Townsend's character basically, and he's basically saying that the house or the sigil that he's from is Baal or Baal, depending on how you guys translate the name. That would mean that he was like the leader of everything.
Yeah.
And so that is the most powerful house when you're talking about the sigils. But the Lesser Key of Solomon, so like this is weird, and the first time I told Lydia, she kind of like looked at me really, really funny. So the Greater Key of Solomon is basically kind of like the good demons. They're the good guys. They're like the ones that try to keep law and order. The Lesser Key, okay, and Lydia's about to probably say something after I say this. The Lesser Key is the bad guys.
They're all bad guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, we know that, but that's basically how. And you don't really have to go too deep, actually, into the Lesser and Greater Key of Solomon to find that. It's actually within the first couple of chapters, really. And I decided that I read enough of it to kind of understand what's really going on here. So, as I said, if Leland is basically comparing himself to Baal, then okay, well, yeah, I can see where he's coming from to a degree.
And he tries to get an exorcist done in season 2.
Yeah, that's right.
And he basically fakes it because he wants to infiltrate the church, and that's essentially what Satan wants to do. Is he's out to steal, kill, and destroy. And Revelation does prophesy that there will be false prophets that preach in Jesus' name. Jesus even said this.
Yeah.
And so that's what Leland, the character, is supposed to do. But what I was thinking is that there's actually another exorcist movie that's based off of a true story called The Pope's Exorcist.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that was definitely Hollywoodized. But yeah,
it was Hollywoodized. But at the end, they mentioned something similar, how there's these demonic factions or houses.
Right. Right.
So that is a concept that's throughout history. That's it's more leaning towards the Roman Catholic side of Christianity versus the Protestant side of Christianity. But that is throughout history, these demonic houses that are seeking to destroy the world. And that's not just in this show. I mean, the show makes emphasis of it. But The Pope's Exorcist, that movie does mention something similar. So I just happened to think of that. That's,
yeah, you're absolutely right. And, this is where demonology primarily came from. Now, demonology is looked at in various different ways depending on your opinion on it. I'll just say this. I don't have a very high opinion of demonologists because two of the most quote-unquote self-proclaimed demonologists that were never, ever, 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 ever approved by the Catholic Church, despite what everybody says, was Ed and Lorraine Warren. And to say that Lydia and I don't have a vendetta against the Warrens is an understatement.
I wouldn't say a vendetta. I just don't like them. But
I have a vendetta against them.
I mean,
they're just based off their character, but
they're passed away. People know the truth, and
yeah, and it's not like they can't find that. But and it's kind of the same thing with what we're talking about. You can go online and find the sigils. Like, you don't have to buy the books necessarily.
Oh yeah, you can just do Google.
You can just, and we did that at first because
Oh, yeah.
I was so unfamiliar with sigils when we first started to dive into this a little bit.
Yeah.
And because I'm more of an ancient symbolism guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry guys, I was trying to say something to Lydia there. But with that being said, it's just one of those shows, guys, that you can fall into that trap really, really easily. And funny enough, that actually happened to us fairly recently. So I'm not going to really talk too much crap about the company because I do like the phone, but I have a Samsung Flip Z, and for whatever reason, my phone, the screen keeps like separating. It's a known issue, but the last time we went in there, we were talking to one of the employees there, and it was a very odd conversation. And so she looked at Lydia's arm, and Lydia has two symbols on her arm. I share one of them, which is it spells out grace, but like the letters are kind of interlaced together. So I guess that for an untrained eye, it would look kind of like a sigil.
And I also have Alpha and Omega and a cross in the middle, and then what is known as the She-Ro tattooed on my arm. And all three of those are symbols for Christianity.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the She-Ro is a lot bigger deal, guys, than what a lot of people know. If you trace back that symbol, it goes back to Constantinople, and it goes back to Lydia's just being goofy over there. So guys, if you're kind of like wondering like why we keep pausing and stuff, we revamped our whole studio, so it's a little bit more comfortable. It's a lot more comfortable, really. But we were able to actually change around the studio a little bit enough to have two really, really comfortable chairs and just make it more like a conversation than anything.
So I'm chilling.
Yeah. So Lydia's kind of all comfied out in the leather chair she's sitting in. It was funny before the show too. She's like, "Do I get the leather chair?"
The hot seat.
We call it the hot seat because like that's where either the co-host or like guests for the show basically sit at.
But back to the show, it's like I said, we've always said the acting is well done. The writing is even
the writing was fantastic. It really was
well done. But throughout season 2, it definitely emphasizes how Satan wants to infiltrate the church.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
100%.
they basically state that in this show, their perspective of the true church is the Catholic Church. We're not going to go into the debate of the Protestant Catholic debate. That's not what we're doing right now.
No, absolutely
so when we mention the church, for in relations to this show only, we mean the Catholic Church, okay?
Yep.
So
Yep.
just to clarify that. And so that's what the second season really emphasizes is how Satan wants to infiltrate the church, which, as I say before, it is happens. But it also in season 2, they also start to realize that there is a IVF.
Yeah, I was hoping that you
that-
would bring that up because I really want you to kind of explain that, especially from your perspective, because it was uncomfortable for me. But you being a woman, and part of our story, guys, is that we were told pretty early in our marriage that Lydia basically couldn't get pregnant. She has PCOS, probably one of the more worst cases of it. And so, like, for us, we considered that at one point. And then, we kind of came to our senses and be like, look, if the Lord doesn't want us to have children, then the Lord doesn't want us to have children. Yeah, if you don't mind, let's talk about that, Lydia. And let's talk about also, like, how, like, what that meant for you when you saw that.
It was like, oh, well, that makes sense from a satanic perspective. That if he wants, because there's been a ton of stories throughout history, from Rosemary's Baby to how people from the movie series The Omen.
Wasn't there one called like The Devil's Advocate that they did that in as well?
No, I think that's a lawyer movie with Keanu Reeves selling.
No, well, I might be wrong about it, but it was I think the woman was either had blonde hair or red hair, and she was trying to basically seduce this guy to bring the Antichrist into the world or something like that. I can't remember what guys. If you know what the name of it is, reach out to us. Email us if you don't mind.
But just basically throughout movie Hollywood history that the quote unquote church,
sure,
and the church is trying to create the Antichrist so they can control him. Like I said, we're not going to go into theology much, but let me just say really quick. We don't. Yeah. Never mind. I'll take hours to explain our theology on the Antichrist. So never mind. I'm not going to do that.
I was just kind of gonna put that in there. So we believe that if you're looking at Scripture, right, anything that doesn't represent Christ is technically speaking an Antichrist. So, though we do believe that there's going to be a new influence, I think they start to bring in influencers towards the end of season 2, right? Or is that
season 1? Season 1.
Oh, it is season 1.
Season 1, they have a makeup artist influencer.
So basically, what that means is that there's always going to be these people that kind of steer the narrative, if you will, and what their job is. Like I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not an influencer whatsoever. I'm a content creator, which is very, very different from that. I'm also trying to get into voiceover work, but that's another conversation, anyways. But what they end up doing is these influencers basically are in some capacity like a servant to the house, like whatever demonic house it was.
Yeah.
And this influencer basically, her job, I think, was to like. It was weird because wasn't there a song or something that they kept playing? It was more annoying than what it was anything.
Yeah, it was. And so she did a makeup video with the song playing in the background. And they realized that there's a certain tone that teenagers and younger can hear. And it played like a demonic, message, which... That people also say if you play certain records backwards, it'll do that too.
Yeah,
things like that.
And don't get. I actually have one of the records in my personal collection, but I've never wanted to play it backwards because guess what, guys? That actually ruins the record. And if I like the band, I'm not going to ruin the record.
Please don't, and don't tell me it's the Stones.
That was one of them supposedly claimed, but Chicago was the biggest one.
Oh well, we have a ton of Chicago. You can do that with all you want.
Yeah, but I like Chicago. As a band.
I'm just kidding.
I know you are. But okay, so you kind of answered the first part of it, but like when you, because I remember you getting really upset watching that, especially when, given our background when it comes to having children or anything like that. Like, would you be willing to kind of explain that? Like when you were watching this thing about in vitro, what did that do? Like, how did that make you feel?
It's just like seriously, I believe part of it, I know in vitro fertilization has helped many people.
Sure, we're not going to deny that.
But in my perspective, you're in a way kind of playing God. I know people are going to disagree with me on that. You can hate me all you want, but that's just my perspective. So just leave it alone. But anyway, so when I saw that, I was like, of course they're going to go there. Like, it's just like, seriously? Like really? Like, you really went there? But then I'm like, well, from a demonic perspective, I mean,
Right.
it makes...
And they were actually altering the DNA of children as well.
Yeah, too.
That was the part that I was like, okay, you've crossed the line.
Yeah,
here.
and one of the main characters, the woman that is the agnostic...
I can't remember all their names, to be honest. I wish I did, but...
she actually had IVF done at this clinic. So in season 2, it starts to reveal that her daughter's starting to reflect some demonic type things. Like, she gets very sharp incisors. I guess they're incisors. I don't know.
I guess they're like canine teeth or something.
Yeah, very
really
sharp canine teeth that are...
They're similar to like a lizard, and I know what you guys are automatically going to say.
Yeah, and in some scenes you see her have a tail.
Yeah.
And things like that throughout season 2. And so it just starts to...
Now, the other thing that happened to this particular daughter that we're talking about is... Now, I think I've mentioned this with Cleveland a few different times, and I might have mentioned it with you at some point, Lydia, but essentially what they do is they find certain people, and then there's what's known as a grooming process.
Yeah.
And the grooming process basically is teaching them how to take over any given demonic house.
Yeah.
And this particular daughter from the psychologist, which is one of the main characters,
Leland Townsend.
No, the other the
mother. Yeah. Dr. LaRue.
Is that what her name was?
Yeah.
Okay. At any rate, so when you're like looking at that, right, it's a bit odd for me. It's a bit strange. But yeah, there was all of these like little innuendos, if you will, of like you kind of expect something to happen, and then when it doesn't, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
There was also something that I think they were doing as well. Weren't they hunting certain people or something like that? Wasn't there like a special... I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but like with David, the priest, didn't the Vatican start coming in by season 2?
Right at the end of it.
Right at the end? Okay.
To be part of this special group, and he had, the inside of Vatican City. Basically, the successor of Vatican City. Which is like the
That's
elite.
The biggest deal that you can get.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of strange things. Now, I think if I'm not mistaken, David the priest, we had mentioned in the first season on our last podcast, if I remember correctly, he was doing visions, and I don't think that he continues to do that in season 2.
No, because there's a new character that's introduced, and she's one of my favorites. She's a nun, and
she was awesome.
Like I said, if I was a nun, I would probably be her, but I'm not Catholic.
She was
so
just this like very short-spoken lady, and basically like she was looked at as a kook, I think.
Yes,
because she would literally say, "You have a demon attached to you."
Yeah, and
she could physically see it and communicate with it.
And she would remove it. And Leland Townsend, season 2, tries to get her, because Leland Townsend views her as a threat, because she can see the demons, and she literally tries to get rid of them with using, the crucifix and the holy water, and also literally smashing it with a shovel.
Yeah, I mean it's over the top, guys. It's way over the top. It was fun to watch.
But
I will say that.
But he tries to get rid of her to make her seem like she's senile and needs to retire from being a nun.
And that didn't work.
No, it didn't work. But her character is introduced, and she becomes kind of like a spiritual mentor, kind of, to David.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would
Even
agree with
though
that.
that's typically not what happens. But anyway, because they're both dealing with demonic forces in different ways,
Right.
because David at the beginning of season 2 was like, goes to this nun and was like, hey, I'm not seeing my visions anymore. What should I do? And she's just, matter of fact, well, you need to pray.
Right.
Like,
The other thing that's really intriguing for me, I felt blindsided by this. Okay. So he goes from having these psychedelic visions to remote viewing. And
yeah,
I know that starts like halfway through season 2 and it gets more or am I wrong?
it doesn't start. It may start like the last episode of season 2, but that's about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, I'm getting a
really.
little bit ahead of myself here, but
Yeah, that's more season 3.
yeah, that's definitely season 3 and season 4. But needless to say, like one of the biggest issues that Lydia and I are facing with this show, just from a theological standpoint, is, and I know that this was done several times, but they misquote scripture to the point of it didn't even make sense in the context. And I know one of them was like Matthew something or other. I should have rewatched it and made some notes, but
I'm not a Catholic theologian, so I don't know if it makes sense from the Catholic perspective. So I can't say that because from the Catholic perspective, they could be read from their theology.
well,
I don't
no,
know.
they specifically cherry picked it. I know they did.
Oh, okay.
Because the context, like I feel like even friends and family that are Catholic would read that or hear that and go, "Hang on a second, that doesn't make any sense."
Yeah.
But yeah, like the season 2 is more of like the developmental, and something also happened with the show by season 2. So originally, Evil was actually supposed to be aired on CBS, and the first season was.
First and second season.
Was it the second season as well?
Yeah, and then by the third season, it gets a little dark and a little.
It doesn't get a little dark; it gets a whole lot of dark.
But it's on Paramount Plus.
Right, which I didn't know this until Lydia told me that CBS basically is the over-encompassing, I don't know what you want to call it,
Yeah.
like videographers or whatever the case is. They're like the mother company of Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
So they still say on the show it's a CBS show, but I'm assuming that means that they produced it. I don't know enough about that industry to be able to say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely an interesting season for sure. And then like I had to laugh at some of this stuff. Was the demon in the wall? Was that season 2? No, okay,
That's season 3.
but
So
yeah,
you're getting a little ahead.
I know. I'm trying to think of like the monsters that they put in season 2, and I'm drawing a blank.
There is a djinn that haunts Ben.
That's in season 2?
Yes, the djinn that haunts Ben is kind of like a djinn is basically the Islamic version of a demon, but they can also be good and bad.
Right. So basically, it's kind of like a spiritual force in a certain sense.
And so this djinn is equivalent to what we would know as a succubus.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that actually happens to 2 people, I think.
Yes,
right?
David has a succubus.
Because David the priest also has
A succubus that manifests him as the psychologist, the doctor.
There is guys. I was actually kind of surprised as to how much sexual innuendo is actually in the whole show, from start to finish. But season 2, it starts to get real creepy, and then by season 3, you're like, did they really just go there? But I can't think of anything else to really talk about with the second season. Can you?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Season 3 will go into a little more detail because it does get a little more dark. I'm rewatching all the seasons again just to refresh myself and take a little more notes. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I actually, to be honest, I actually enjoyed the show.
Yeah, I did as well.
I thought the acting was really good. Like, some of my favorite character is the nun.
I straight up said it as soon as she came in.
She's a very famous actress. She is in the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding. She plays Aunt Vula. And
she's a fantastic actress. She really
she's
is
great. And so But I don't really have anything else to say.
No, you did. I know I just kind of briefly touched it, but did you want me to cover more of the whole what you were talking about when it came to when a certain person takes over the house? Did I cover enough of that, or do I need to go a little bit
I
deeper?
think you did. I think season 3 you can discuss more on it because that's where it really gets a little more dark.
It gets weird too. It's not
Yeah.
just dark, but it's weird.
So, but we'll get more into the next season. I know this episode's a little shorter, but the season 3 and 4 is going to be the more ones we're going to have more conversations.
Yeah, and
on.
there is talk. There's rumors and talk within Hollywood that they may be able to do a 5th season. That's been talked about for a couple of months, I guess.
But they concluded it really well. But
They
anyway.
did, but they kind of also left it open as well. Which is totally fine. I know by the last season, like when we talk about that, guys, they literally throw everything at you and hope something sticks.
But at least the network allowed them to have 4 extra episodes to conclude it.
I mean, that doesn't happen very often, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
so I'm very grateful that they were able to do that because there's a lot of seasons, a lot of shows that they just end on a cliffhanger, and you're like, well,
yeah. There's been there was one show, and I can't even remember what it was now. It was a couple of years ago.
Damnation.
Yes, it was. So Damnation was a fantastic TV show, in my opinion. I love the end of the cowboy era. I loved everything that they were doing, and it literally stopped at season 2. And we're like, "Where's the rest of it? Like, are they going to bring it back?" No. But it's again, like the acting was great, the writing was great. I think they really did have a really good idea for this project.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the only reason why Lydia and I are really addressing it is because of those theological issues, and we're concerned for people out there like getting into the show and thinking that all of it's just from a show. It's definitely not.
And it's cool, Let's dive into this. Like, I have a hypothesis that a lot of people are into the Norse theology and Norse religion because of the show Vikings.
Right.
That really, I mean, I know people have been practicing it since then, and it's not
It never
stopped.
completely stopped.
But as Jeff Durbin has said, well, if you want to be a true Viking, convert to Christianity. I mean, so
Yeah, and that's
anyway, that's another issue altogether. But what I'm saying is that there's shows influence people to look into things like witchcraft and occultism are no longer in the shadows. They're literally blatantly right there in the public. And where did it start with? It starts with TV shows. Like Disney has so many witch shows.
Well, here's
out there,
here's
and it
another
makes
one.
It okay.
Here's another one that I'm going to point out that you said was going to turn into a phenomenon. You ready for this? American Horror Story.
Oh yeah.
That straight up turned into an American phenomenon. So where so many people were, looking into this stuff way deeper than what they really should have.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the first few seasons again, and the first few seasons are completely different than the last ones. But
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is that TV shows can influence, especially younger adults and young people, to look into different things.
Sure.
And if you don't, you need to make sure that you're grounded in proper theology and proper truth. But anyway, that's why we're doing what we're doing. But I think that's all I really have to say right now.
Alrighty, well, at this point, I encourage you guys to think about the things that we've talked about and analyze it from your own point of view. You decide what you believe in and who you believe in. If you have any suggestions on topics you'd like us to discuss or inquiries about the Out of Darkness podcast, please reach out to us via Facebook or Instagram, or you can email us at indarknessindelight@gmail.com. That's all for now. Thank you for listening and stay tuned for more content. God bless.